Hello everyone, welcome back to my English class. Today we are going to talk about relative clause, defining and non-defining relative clauses. A relative clause. What is a relative clause? A relative clause is a clause that we use to describe a noun. So the function is to describe noun. Example, I have a red bottle, and we can use the relative clause which is red. I have a bottle which is red. Okay, let's get a bottle. A bottle is a noun which is red. That is the relative clause. Which, that is the relative pronoun. So we have to know that the relative clause here is describing the noun which is bottle. Okay, now let's look at the relative pronouns. We have 5 connectors. We have 5 relative pronouns: who, which, whose, where, and when. Let's look at the use. Who is used for people, which for things and animals, whose for possession, where for places, when for times. Okay, let's look at the examples. Examples of relative pronouns in sentences. Yesterday I met my new boss who was very nice. So who is used for people. New boss, of course, is a person. The museum which we visited last week is one of the biggest museums in Indonesia. Okay, so which here is used for museum, which is a thing. My next door neighbor, whose children go to school with ours, has just bought a new car. Okay, so whose is used for possession, whose children, okay, whose children belong to. Number 4, the library where we borrowed books yesterday will be renovated. Here we have where, and where is used for a place. Library is a place, right? Number 5, August 17, when Independence Day is celebrated, is the special day for Indonesian citizens. Yes, August 17 is a time, so we use when. Okay, so these are the examples of relative pronouns in sentences. Now let's look at defining and non-defining relative clauses. Defining relative clauses are used to give essential information about someone or something, while non-defining relative clauses are used to give extra information about the person or the thing. So the difference here, defining relative clause is essential information, but non-defining is about extra information. This gives extra information. This gives essential information or important. We need the relative clause in order to understand who or what the speaker is describing. Yes, we need the clause in order to understand the sentence completely. The relative clause it only gives additional information, yes, extra or additional information. We don't need it to understand who or what the speaker is describing. Without the relative clause, we can still understand, and the meaning is clear. Okay, now let's get started with defining relative clauses. Defining relative clauses are used to give essential information about someone or something essential. Example, the museum which we visited last week is one of the biggest museums in Indonesia. So this is the relative clause which we visited last week. We have relative pronoun which. Okay, now let's look at here. There is no comma here. Yes, before the clause, after the clause, there is no comma. The relative clause is important. Yes, this is essential. The museum is one of the biggest museums in Indonesia. If we remove the clause, the relative clause. People may ask us, which museum are you talking about? Yeah, because there are many museums in Indonesia, right? It could be this one or this one. So we need the relative clause to know which one the speaker is describing, which one the speaker is talking about. Yes, so we cannot omit this relative clause. Okay, now let's continue to more examples of defining clauses. Defining relative clauses, I mean. The clown who came to my nephew's house is my friend. The cat which is climbing the tree stole my food yesterday. The woman whose hair is straight is the policeman's wife. Okay, let's look at the picture. We have two women here, right? So we should know the detail, the characteristic. Then we need the relative clause, whose hair is straight. Which one is straight? Yes, this woman, right? So we know that this is the policeman's wife. If we delete, if we remove the relative clause here, whose hair is straight, into the woman is the policeman's wife. Yeah, we're confused which one, right? Yeah, that's why. This is important, essential. Okay. Let's continue to non-defining relative clauses. Non-defining relative clauses are used to give information about the person or thing. So this is only giving extra information, not essential. Example: the National Museum of Indonesia, which we visited last week, is one of the biggest museums in Indonesia. Okay, so here we have which we visited last week. This is the relative clause. Okay, there's a comma here, right? Before and after the relative clause. So we have two commas here. And yeah, the relative clause only gives additional information. If it is removed, the meaning is still clear. Let's try. The National Museum in Indonesia is one of the biggest museums in Indonesia. Yeah, you understand that. We understand what the speaker is describing. So, we can omit the relative clause. This is only giving extra information. And remember, it is common in written English, the non-defining relative clause. Okay, the sentence is still clear. Yeah, we know which museum the speaker is trying to say, is trying to describe, right? This is the National Museum of Indonesia. Let's look at more examples of non-defining relative clauses. My cat, which is climbing the tree, never steals my food. Yeah, we know which cat I mean. The nice, beautiful young American woman, whose husband is the principal, is talking to the security. Yeah, we know which women. Mr. Angel, who likes playing soccer, will bring us to the National Museum. Of course, we know, because there's only one Mr. Angel, right? So we don't need to question that. Okay, let's continue. Now let's compare these two sentences. My sister, who studies at Harvard University, is very smart. My sister, who studies at Harvard University, very smart. Okay, so here we have a difference. A comma. Yes, here we have a comma before and after the relative clause. So which one is defining and non-defining? Yeah, this one is defining and this one is non-defining. Let's look at the difference. Here, it says that I have more than one sister. My sister, who studies at Harvard University, is very smart. So I have more than one sister. This is the defining relative clause. And the relative clause is important so that the listener knows who I am describing. Yes, I'm describing one of my sisters who studies at Harvard. Yeah, perhaps I have other sisters in different places. And now, in this sentence, I'm describing the sister my sister who studies at Harvard University. So this is clear for the listener that I have more than one sister. While here, my sister who studies at Harvard University is very smart. We have a comma. So this gives extra information about my sister, as it means I only have one sister. Yes, this is a non-defining relative clause, and it gives extra information. If we remove who studies at Harvard, this is very clear, right? My sister is very smart. Well, okay, after discussing the relative clause, the defining and non-defining relative clause, now let's work on this exercise. Direction. Complete the sentences with the correct non-defining relative clause in the box. Yes. Number 1 is done. I love going on holiday to Ireland, where you can find lovely beaches. Okay, so try to work on number 2 to number 4. Okay, to make sure you really understand about non-defining relative clauses, try to write 2 examples and comment down below. Okay, I think that's all for today. Thank you for your attention, and bye for now.